And so welcome to a very sunny Yeovil, which was bizarrely hailing seconds ago. Strangest weather ever. However, what I'm doing in Yeovil is I'm back again to have another DEXA scan, which is dual energy X-ray absorbometry. I remembered it, you see. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch this video here. We'll explain what that is. I'm actually here to do a couple of things, really. I am going to eat this. So around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on when I come out after the scan, that'll be my last meal for 4 days, 96 hours. Again, I'm no stranger to extended fasts. You can watch this video up here. But when I did these extended fasts, 236 back-to-back hours of fasting before, I lost weight. I think it was around 2.5, 3 kilos. The thing is, we don't know what I lost the weight from. Now, it could have been muscle, it could have simply been water. Ultimately, what I'm looking to lose is visceral fat. So I thought I would do this experiment. DEXA scan, 4-day fast, and then on Friday at 4 o'clock, another DEXA scan. And that's metric number 1. Metric number 2 we're going to look at is related. It's ketones. Now, I've got some ketone strips. Now, the level of my ketones will tell me just how much of my energy burning is coming from fat stores. Back in November last year, I had a DEXA scan and my visceral fat levels were frighteningly high. I'd like to say that I believe today I'm going to find that those numbers will have reduced. If I'm completely honest, if I'm really honest, which I can only be, I'm not entirely convinced they will be. I think I have made some changes. One thing that Chris, who is the DEXA scan operator and expert, said to me when I was here last was he lost quite a few centimetres squared, essentially, of visceral fat, just simply by eating more fruit and veg. And I must admit, I have most definitely been doing that. So today might just be that little push, that incentive that I need to have to make me realise that actually I've probably got to try an awful lot harder. Anyway, let's get in there, get it done, and we'll look at the results tomorrow. If somebody had told me that I would feel as good as I do right now after 45 hours plus of fasting, I would have done this years ago. So yes, I've been fasting for over 2 days now. Yesterday, Bex and I went salsa dancing, had an amazing time. I felt really sharp and actually super on it. Bit of a weird thing. I think we usually think we're going to feel super lethargic after not eating food, but I felt amazing. Had a right laugh as well. Bex was fasting for 24, 36 hours actually yesterday as well. Seemingly all going very well. Now let's have a look at the DEXA scan from Monday and compare it to the one that I did back in November. I have notes. There's quite a lot of information to get through. Now, the very first metric I'm going to give you from November last year compared to this April highlights exactly why DEXA scans are really important for us if we want to know exactly what our body is made up of. So our mass, our total mass, is something we can weigh on the scales at home with good continuity. So the up and down will be fairly consistent on that. Whether it's accurate or not is a different thing, but its consistency will be there. When I went to have my scan in November, I weighed 93.4 kilos. When I went to have my scan on Monday, I weighed 94.7. So I put on 1.2 kilos, a devastating blow, in all honesty, for somebody that's trying to lose weight. If you step on those scales, find you put on 1.2 kilos, and the next thing you know, you're straight on the phone to Domino's. But it's the 3 parts that the DEXA scan measures that are absolutely the most important information here. So what is that 94 kilos made up of? Well, the first metric is bone density. Now, if my bone density had changed at all in the last 6 months, myself and Chris, the DEXA scan operator, would have been concerned. It is identical. My bone structure hasn't decreased or increased at all, which is a good thing, of course. So let's look at muscle mass. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In November last year, I weighed 60 kilos of lean muscle mass. I now weigh 62 kilos of lean muscle mass. I'm 47, and apparently as you get older, you can't build muscle. If you lift weights and if you eat plenty of protein, you can put on lean muscle mass. 2 kilos since November. Mission very much accomplished. The majority of that mass has been gained in my arms and my torso, less so in my legs, but my legs are already strong from years of cycling and running. I'm very happy indeed with this. And so on to the final metric, which is fat. Now, I'm going to need to read this because there's a lot. In November last year, I was 32.2% body fat. I'm now down to 31% body fat. That's a reduction of 1.2%. Now, let's be honest, it could and should be a hell of a lot more than that. But the point is, it has not gone up and it has not stayed the same. It has gone down. And that amounts to about 700 grams of fat that I've lost since November. And that is where the discrepancy lies. So that 1.27 kilos of mass that I've put on is mainly muscle increase and a fat loss. Great news, I do need to lose more fat, and that brings me on to the most vital metric and the whole reason why I'm going for DEXA scans in the first place, my visceral fat. In November last year, I was at 171 centimetres squared. I'm now down to 169 centimetres squared, so a loss of 2 centimetres square of visceral fat. Again, a loss, but not enough. If ever there was a motivation to keep doing what I'm doing, but also increase that, it shows that the lifting and the protein is working. I need to keep adjusting my nutrition and diet. As I said, when I was sat in the car before the DEXA scan, I didn't believe I'd made a huge difference, if any at all. I have increased the amount of veg and fruit that I'm eating. I just need to keep cutting back on all the crap. We probably all do. But all in all, that is excellent news. I'm super happy with those results. Everything's going the right direction. It's just that some things could go the right direction a little bit quicker than others. Anyway, let's leave this a day or so, see how I'm feeling after 3 days of fasting, and let's talk about ketones. Ketones may sound like a 60s throwback band that worked with that chancer of a producer, Mark Ronson, but actually, if you follow pro cycling, you'll know the name. The use of exogenous or external ketones in pro cycling has been a controversial subject. Exogenic means putting something in your body from the outside. Endogenic ketones has something slightly different. Your body uses carbohydrates or sugar as a fuel source primarily because it's very easy to turn into energy. But when that runs out, when you're fasting or you cut back onto a keto diet or something similar like that, your body only has fat stores to use as energy. Now, the fat goes into the liver and comes out as an energy source called a ketone. It's endogenous, turns fat into ketones. And that is what your body starts to fuel your energy with. And using a ketone meter, you can see how many ketones you have in your bloodstream. And the higher you're reading, the more ketones you're burning, which means by default, that's how much of an increase in fat you're burning when you're fasting. In the first couple of days, mine was around 0.4, 0.5 millimoles, which is low, kind of roughly where it could be when you're not fasting. But then as the days went on, as the hours went on, it's ramped up to 1.4, 2 and higher, which shows that I'm burning fat as an energy store for both, not just my body, but my brain as well.
24 hours to go.
So it's the morning of day 4. Come 4 o'clock this afternoon, DEXA scan, and I'll also be able to eat, should I want to. I have to say, there is a temptation to carry on because I feel so damn good and not hungry. However, that is not what the experiment is. The experiment is to do the DEXA scan and find out what 4-day fasting results in terms of what that fat loss has come from. Weighing myself this morning is quite interesting and looks like I've lost sort of in the region of 4 kilos over 4 days, which is a huge amount, but of what? And that is what the question is. So I have a couple of thoughts and observations that I'll keep relatively short because the DEXA scan results are going to be the most important thing for us to dig into. But the two things that I've been thinking about the last couple of days are, one, I haven't felt hungry because essentially the energy that I've got seems to be coming from this process of ketosis, which I've explained. The other thing is this sense of mental acuity. The last time I did extended fasts, I didn't feel sharp all the time. I do feel very sharp. Yesterday I was shooting a video with a band and I felt able to sort of almost predict the musicians' movements and kind of prepare and move with them. Out on the trail run that I did this morning with Bex and the dogs, I felt very much at one with the kind of pathway that's kind of really rocky and sometimes quite treacherous to run down. I felt really comfortable and loose and easy running along there. And it got me thinking about some of those amazing endurance athletes on the bike, your Mark Beaumonts, running wise, your Kilian Jornets. And I wonder whether we have this perception that when people are doing ultra endurance, that they're kind of battling utter sleep deprivation and this kind of, they're not really with it. And I wonder whether actually the ketone production that's fueling the brain is the same thing that people talk about in like the Hemsworth documentary, where he's talking about it being the thing that fuels hunters. It always did, you know, for thousands of years. The access to constant high sugar foods is only a very, very tiny recent bit of history. For hundreds of thousands of years before then, not eating and then eating and then not eating and eating was the norm. And it was at the very end of the not eating stage when you were hunting that you needed that energy, but you also needed that mental acuity to listen, and be able to predict animal movements, to be able to hunt. And I wonder whether in the realm of endurance sports, whether that ability to ride or run, if you watch Kylian Jornet, he's just beautiful in touch with the pathways. And I wonder if some of that's not just in the air, you know, in an ability thing. Some of that might actually be to do with the fact that they're so far fat adapted and they're at that level of ketone usage when they're doing their events that perhaps that's what's going on there. And it's just an observation, and maybe it would be a really interesting piece of research for someone that's far cleverer than I, but I think that's what's happening. Why did I think this was going to be a good idea? Where are we? In the van. Where have you just driven us to?
Yeovil.
Okay, and why are we in Yeovil?
Because you're about to have your second DEXA scan.
I am, yeah. So I thought it would be a good idea to ask you what I've been like in the last 4 days, because I've got my opinion, but that doesn't mean anything. I know 2 of the 4 days you and I were working super hard, barely saw each other. But what's your general vibe of how I've been?
Yeah, just normal, really.
Whatever that is.
I expected you to be hangry and, yeah, a little bit, you know, tetchy, but yeah. No, you've just, like, as if nothing's happened.
It is a bit weird. That's how I feel. Other than feeling alert in a very unusual way, I haven't felt hungry at all. I could definitely push on. I'm not going to, but I could push on. I've got a nice meal booked. No, yeah, and everything's fine.
Booked in your packed lunch.
Yeah, booked in my packed lunch. Yeah, so we're going to wander down and get the DEXA scan done, and then we'll know what it is that I've lost, because I've lost quite a few kilos, which is a little bit worrying, because if that's muscle, then I've wasted my time putting those 2 kilos on in the last 6 months. But we'll go and see in a bit. But yeah, you drove down, didn't you? We'd already arranged for you to drive, because I was concerned at the beginning of this project of what I might
feel a little bit lightheaded or something.
Yeah, and I actually don't think it would have been a problem, to be honest with you. But yeah, so I've wasted your time. I'm sorry.
How dare you?
28 years, wasted every minute of it with you. Cool, should we go get a scan done?
Let's do it.
Okay, so some quick observations before we get into the nerdy detail and discover exactly what happened by the numbers. The DEXA scan takes place in the X-ray department of an NHS hospital, and whilst I was in the waiting room, I was once again struck by the fact that I was the only person that was in there through choice. The rest of them were there by necessity, and in most cases it was clear why. Medicine 2.0 uses technology, research and medicine for the treatment of illness and disease and the symptoms thereof. Medicine 3.0 is the use of technology, research and medicine to avoid illness, disease and the symptoms thereof. In as many ways as possible, I am trying to attempt to remain in any waiting room through choice and not through necessity. And that's why you're watching these videos, I think. You're watching them for exactly the same reason that I make them. So subscribe to the channel and I'll keep making them for you. It was somewhat easier than I thought it was going to be, and certainly easier than the 2 36-hour fasts I did before indicated it was going to be, because that certainly had its moments. I expected to feel weird and very hungry. I did feel a little bit weird, but in a sharp, clear-headed way, not woozy or light-headed. The only real and noticeable consistent thing was bad breath, which I have to admit I really hate, and so did Bex. I had a plentiful supply of energy when it was required, and it felt like it was coming from an unusual source. A bit like when you're aware you've had too much coffee or sugar and you can tell it feels slightly unusual. Regarding keeping busy, I had loads of energy and focus at work. However, on Thursday afternoon, around about 72 hours in, I had half an hour to chill out before filming a music video. During that time, I felt really lethargic and lightheaded, and I was starting to get a bit panicked that it was the beginning of it getting really hard. However, as soon as we started to shoot, the energy levels and the focus kicked back in. Big time. Odd. It seems my body switched on or off, completely dependent on what was needing to be done, but that's kind of cool, and it does make sense in the sort of hunting origins sort of area. My mental sharpness was also a little otherworldly and could possibly be quite addictive if I'm completely honest. I guess it could be indicative, maybe, of the wider association with eating disorders. All of this got me thinking about the term hunger and how a lot of the time it's a negative, but we also use it in regard to being driven, being hungry for success or knowledge. And let's face it, what's more dangerous? A hungry wolf or a sated lion? Okay, let's get into the really important stuff, and I'll put the numbers here as there's an awful lot to discuss. From Monday to Friday, I lost 3.92 kilos, and here is where I lost that mass. 0 change in bone density, thank God, and I lost 1.96 kilos of fat, which is great. However, I also lost the exact same in lean muscle mass, 1.96 kilos. So that's an exact 50-50 split between fat and muscle, and leaves me with a 50-50 dilemma too. If you recall at the start of the video, my DEXA scan on Monday showed I had put on 2 kilos of muscle through increased protein and improved weight training since November last year. That has all gone in 4 days. And it gets much harder to maintain or gain muscle as we get older, so this is all bad. We need muscle to remain mobile, and it's a key factor in health span. As Atir says, given all the knowledge he has, his desert island choice, if he could only continue to do one thing as he got older, would be to continue weight training 3 times a week with heavy weights. Muscle mass is the single most vital thing. Despite that, I've also lost 1.96 kilos of fat, but not just any old fat. 1.3 kilos of that is from around my trunk. 15.5 kilos of fat on Monday to 14.2 kilos on Friday, and a whopping 18 centimeters squared of visceral fat has gone. I dropped 2 centimeters squared between November and April, and 18 between Monday and Friday. I've gone from 169 centimeters squared to 151, and that is great. I need to be under 100 centimeters squared. We all do, so that is a huge leap. I basically lost 10.6% of my visceral fat in 4 days. So there's my dilemma. Peter Atir has changed his mind on fasting based off of this very fact. He lost too much muscle mass whilst fasting. He also mentions this happened despite weight training during fasting, something I'd noticed Atir and Hemsworth did in Limitless, and it's not something I did or had the time to do. And I can't really find any research to back up why he'd do this. But there must be some, because he's so vigorous. But I can guess it might be a case of triggering the body to know that by using the muscle, it mustn't burn it as fuel. Either way, here are the pros. I have lost a significant percentage of visceral fat, and the cons are I have lost a significant percentage of muscle mass. And unknowns, well, the unknown really is if and when autophagy has been triggered. It leaves me with a single question I'd like to know the answer to, and maybe becomes an experiment in the future. Over the 4 days of fasting, was the loss of visceral fat and muscle mass comparable regarding time, quantity and consistency? So, was I losing fat and muscle at the same rate, or did I lose visceral fat first over 24 to 48 hours and then it switched to muscle mass, or some mixture of the above? I would love to know the answer to this, along with whether lifting weights during a fast has any impact. So many questions. So this really does leave me in a dilemma. We know very little on dosing fast, which is kind of crazy considering the amount of actual science and bro science there is out there about it. It's either the key to eternal life or the shortcut to death, depending on who you listen to. I'm left wondering what to do now until I learn more. Based off my results and what I've read, I can only kind of make an educated guess here. Currently, my visceral fat is too high. The impact that will have on my risk of the 4 horsemen being the end of me is so high currently that I probably won't get to the point where my muscle mass will be needed to remain mobile and all of the amazing metabolic systems that you get as a result. Essentially, until my visceral fat is safely below 100 centimeters squared, I may need to take a bit of a muscle mass hit to get there, but I think I can negate that and get a better balance. In order, here's my plan of attack. Eat better. There is no point in running the tap into the bucket whilst trying to bail it out. My protein intake is already pretty good, but less sugar, less saturated fats, more salad, fresh fruit, veg, lean meat, fewer calories from junk in general. We all know this. We know the saying you can't out-train a bad diet, but how about you can't out-fast a bad diet? There's a reason that nutrition is more foundational than exercise in my midlife hierarchy. 24 to 48 hour fast once a month, but bookended by high protein meals and lifting weights during the fasts. Continuing my daily intermittent fasting as a form of time restricted eating, which naturally reduces calorie intake. But see point 1, the calories I do intake must be more kick-ass. Upping the muscle mass gain. more focused weight sessions and extending each session from 30 to 40 minutes to 40 to 60 minutes 3 times a week with shorter core workouts in between. My goal that way will be to upset the balance, increasing the muscle mass to offset any loss I get during shorter fasts, and therefore less muscle mass loss overall during fasting. The fasting idea being to negate visceral fat and possibly trigger autophagy. I was hoping this experiment would give us more knowledge, and I guess to a greater or lesser extent it has. Extended fasting has, at least in this experiment, led to great visceral fat loss result but a poor lean mass result. So depending on your body composition, extended fasting may not be the right course of action. To some extent, exactly what Peter Attia has been saying in recent years. My next DEXA scan will be in October, just before my 48th birthday. My goal in the next 6 months is pretty simple. Let's see when I drop this bit into the video I make in October, eh? Here we go. And I will reduce my visceral fat to below 100 centimeters squared. Okay, remember, this is not my channel, it's ours. If you're not a member of this awesome community, then click on the subscribe button below, give this video a thumbs up, and if you've learned anything at all, or you've got a comment to make, then please leave a comment below. And until the next video, look after yourselves and those around you.